Hello indie game fans, welcome back to I Dream of Indie, or if it's your first time here at the channel, welcome. Consider hitting that subscribe button below for more great indie reviews and previews. Today we're taking a look at the Hong Kong Massacre on the Nintendo Switch, releasing as of December 26th of 2020, a game that was previously released on the Steam PC platform and the PlayStation 4. There is a little bit of a discount at the time of this review on the Switch version that brings it down to $15.99. Normally this game will be priced at $19.99. It comes from publisher Untold Tales, and it's a top-down action game. The inspirations are pretty clear on this one. In fact, the developer of Rescue here, whom this is their first game actually, believe it or not, has cited such inspirations as John Woo movies and Hotline Miami, and they really do shine through in this game. Story-wise, you have a pretty typical revenge plot going on here as you'll play as an ex-cop who is out to avenge the death of his former partner. While the story really isn't all that interesting, to be honest with you, and nothing you haven't seen in other revenge-style games before, I do have to credit the overall cinematic feel of this game. You do get some nice cutscenes, some close-ups of your character driving along that really do ooze atmosphere, and they feed into the overall aesthetic of this game quite well. I really hate to keep harping on the whole Hotline Miami thing here, but gameplay-wise, that is where this game kind of falls. If you've played any game in that series, you more or less know what to expect, though this can feel a little bit stripped down in comparison. You're not able to really throw items, and the overall flow of combat isn't as fast and furious, that's not a reference to the movie by the way, as that game is. That doesn't mean that the gameplay is bad or inferior per se, though I personally do prefer that aforementioned series in terms of how it played, but just that this game feels a little bit weightier and more cinematic. Movement is of course controlled with the left stick, and you'll do a lot of your aiming with the right stick as you blast away at your enemies either through doors or strategically behind corners using the back trigger. There are a couple elements that help to set this title apart in terms of gameplay though, including the ability to slow down time, which does have a bar all of its own, and you might argue it's a little bit too generous, but this does help you to dodge out of the way of enemy fire and strategically place each shot. That's not all, however, as you can also dive forward or slide in this game, which allows you to avoid enemy fire, and not only that, it looks really stylish. Generally, when you defeat an enemy in the Hong Kong Massacre, they will leave behind a weapon, whether it be a pistol, a shotgun, an SMG, or a rifle. These are all weapons that you can also upgrade by earning stars. There are little side objectives in each mission that will help you to earn more of those stars, and then you can upgrade each weapon individually. This includes increasing the fire rate or the clips. It's really helpful if you want to get further and further into this title, as this is quite the difficult game despite the fact that you can choose between 3 different difficulties. Difficult, yes, but addicting, absolutely. I did quite enjoy the gameplay here. It's not necessarily as smooth and combo heavy as Hotline Miami was again, but it has a different feel, and that's not necessarily a knock against the game. I do think the cinematic approach can actually work in this game's favor. I really enjoyed the moments of diving forward, blasting enemies, and hitting them successfully. It feels quite satisfying. Despite the fact that this game will only take you 3 to 5 hours to complete, depending on your skill level, there are plenty of reasons to go back if you do want to try to get all those stars and truly master these levels. Only a little bit of a complaint here in terms of the overall flow of this game would be in the boss battles, which are kind of irritating and not necessarily all that well designed, but thankfully there's only one per world, I guess you could call them, towards the end, so it's not a huge deal, but they are a little bit forced in there. I did ultimately miss the ability to throw my weapon at an enemy too, which is something I really think this game could have benefited from, but at the same time I'm not going to completely hold that against the Hong Kong Massacre. Overall, it's quite fun to play. Graphically too, it looks really stylish. The Nintendo Switch version holds up pretty well, probably not as smooth as its counterparts. I haven't played them to verify that, but still I think the game performs admirably. The frame rate was mostly solid in the docked mode. It did appear to take a little bit of hit when I was playing handheld, which is a little bit disappointing. I generally play my Switch docked, but for those of you that were hoping to take this one on the go, it is a little bit more sluggish in that regard, but still, I think that the performance of the game is solid considering it's a Switch title. The game does meet a decent balance of performance versus graphical fidelity that works in the system's favor, but I also think the soundtrack and sound effects are really quite thrilling here. The sounds of bullets whizzing by are impressive. The soundtrack is really high adrenaline, a lot of electronica, very good tracks. I enjoyed them quite a bit myself. Obviously kind of, again, catering to that Hotline Miami dance vibe, but I still think they're good tracks on their own. Ultimately, if you couldn't tell by the end of this review, where the Hong Kong Massacre sets itself apart from its predecessors is in its cinematic qualities, which are really quite enjoyable. The combat is not as fluid as perhaps some of you would like out there. It's certainly a more weighty, heavier feel, and maybe a little bit more methodical in its approach. I think the Hong Kong Massacre was always going to be victim to comparisons just based on the fact that it is so similar to one of the great indie games of all time, but I still think it's worth a look if you enjoy that style of gameplay. There is some fun to be had here despite some of its shortcomings. So what do you think? Will you be checking out the Hong Kong Massacre on the Nintendo Switch? Let us know in the comments section below. If you've enjoyed our video coverage, do hit that subscribe button if you so wish. It helps us to bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming. There's a ton of other ways to support I Dream of Indie right down in our description box. We have a Discord, a merchandise store, or even consider a membership. But however you end up supporting us, it means the world. We thank you so much.